Well, whenever I'm doing and talking to plants, this week my violet bloomed, my orchid is blooming, and my hibiscus bloomed.
Nice.
So I feel like I'm bringing in that new energy for September, start up in a blooming way, like in a blessed way instead of a stressed way. Even though the little stress monster does like to sneak in. I go, no, hibiscus, orchid, violet, basil.
I mean, like some of it, what you just said, Tanya, was really interesting because some of it could be just that, you know, to find the languaging for parents to use with their kids. Like a story that Tanya was just saying, like that stress monster or whatever that wants to appear, that protective brain of ours that overrides the thinking brain. You know, how do we can explain to children that when we get into that, it's very hard to make good decisions. You know, that kind of applies to all ages, but specifically to school age kids. So it's important to notice when that little protective thing kind of crawls in and takes over. I love the image that Tanya just gave. And then how do we calm that down so that we can look at it, welcome it, recognize it, but then say, okay, I'm not going to do that right now, and move back into a more integrated way.
Lisa, you know that you just created our children's book?
Our children's book, eh?
I mean, CanBeWell.
So it's interesting because that brings us to the awareness of where are you noticing it? You know, and if it's always going to your stomach or it always goes to your breath.
Right.
And maybe every time you're feeling anxious, you're holding your breath. Then to actually be aware, oh, I'm holding my breath again. I just take a breath. That's nice and simple.
Or I get this thing in my throat and I can't talk anymore. So when the teacher calls on me, I won't be able to answer. Or, you know, the shoulder, like you did it with the jaws lock, or the shoulders go. Like we have so many ways of playing with that physically.
Your hips and bum start to hurt because you've been sitting in the chair too long and you haven't got up and
can't
moved.
sit still anymore. Gonna play with the mask. Put it up here.
And one of the things that I actually had prepared for our meeting that we had with our organization yesterday, but my camera wasn't able to be on, was actually with my hands, because that's something that you can do sitting at your desk, but you can do it also just sitting in the car on your way to something or back from something. And that was just even close and open, and just to make that fist and then let it go and let that energy be out. And even if you wanted to think about holding it and then what happens when you let it go, how does that feel and how do you expand? And bring your thoughts back in and then let it go again. And that, you know, it's really simple. In dance class, we would do, it might be like 1, 2, 3, pop, you know, and then I might actually add 1, 2, 3, and everybody would go, ha, and then do it again, 1, 2, 3, ha, and we'd all be doing it at the same time. But after you've done it a few times, you just everything relaxes and the fingers are open, and you know that in is released.
It's a great game.
I can let it go.
Well, it's interesting because I'm taking a short course called Making Space, and as you know, my labyrinth is full of herbs, but I haven't done anything with them until she said she'd made herb tea. So I thought, okay, that's it. So I went out on Monday or Tuesday morning. It's probably Tuesday, and I picked some thyme and some lemon thyme and some sage and a little bit of mint, and I put them in a mason jar, and I poured boiling water on them. And then I just kept pouring boiling water on until I had this huge, like, jars of herb tea, right? And I think that sometimes our tools are like that, right? Like we have this garden of tools, but we don't use them. And then so like now herb tea will be something I'll do every couple of days till probably they're gone, right? But I think that our tools are right. Like we get so caught up in the busyness of our lives, we don't take the time to breathe or notice what's around us, or our field, or ground our feet, or, you know, take 5 minutes outside to notice nature. And I think that the biggest message, I think, is to feel good. School starts. Find ways to put them in, right? You know, find ways to either pick your herbs or smell your seawater, or like I went out at lunchtime and picked blackberries. And then I noticed that one of the leaves was heart-shaped, and I sent it to Paula, of course, because Paula and I send nature pictures back and forth every day, which is another of our strategies. But I think if I hadn't gone out to pick blackberries, I wouldn't have seen the heart on the leaf. I wouldn't have been reminded to notice. But I think that one of the things that we do when we get busy is we drop all the things that we need more.
Mm-hmm.
When really what we need to do is expand them. Like when I'm really busy, I need to make myself go outside, right? I need to make myself step away from the computer, go outside, if I only breathe for 5 minutes, and then come back, because then I'll be able to get it done, because I'll have a different frame of mind. So today the power outage made it almost impossible, but that's not in my control, right? But the point is that I spent the afternoon energized because I took that 10 minutes to go outside, pick the blackberries, look around nature, smell, and then I had some chocolate mint in my tea and some of my herb water. And, you know, so, but someone else might want to just walk at lunch, or breathe, or I can imagine that Natascha might like to juice, you know, so.
Well, for me, my standard is to go out in nature, and I've been taking a lot of photos lately and sending them, but really noticing in nature. Like I just noticed, you know, there's those patterns in nature that we have in our life. Right now, I'm starting to see some shifts in the weather patterns, and it feels like fall is starting to show up a little bit. Noticing the sunrise and sunset a little bit differently now. It's coming up a lot later, and so just being out in nature and taking that time to notice really makes a difference. I notice how it draws in my awareness, and I just feel good when I'm out in nature. So for me, that's just one of the best tonics, is getting outside at different points in the day and being in nature.
I noticed, you know, I live surrounded by fields. So I'm in nature. I mean, I'm in my house, but nature is right there and I can just go outside the door. But at the moment, I'm in the city, and my son's apartment is right next to the busiest road to go across the bridge. And so the traffic is going by all the time. And I thought, oh, I don't know if I'm going to be able to handle this. I'm used to peace and quiet. However, they live on the street, but their side is covered by these overgrown trees. And as soon as you walk out of the sidewalk that is the main thoroughfare and you go under the trees, you can immediately feel everything calm and shift. And when you come in their back door, you have to walk through all the green to get to the back door and then come into the house. And it's a completely different feel than if we were going to come through the front door, which is kind of an interesting thing to even look at when we're leaving to go to school or, you know, go to work and then coming home. How are you doing that? And Tanya, you're probably, you know, the same with, you've been working from home and you've created this oasis in your garden of how you can navigate around it every day. But it does change the way you can go into a situation or you can come back out of a situation just by how you approach that.
Well, and if I'm stressed, I just go walk the labyrinth. Which sounds simplistic, right? I mean, the simplest things are often the best, right? If we figure out what works for us, then when we're stressed and we do it and it releases our stress, then we face the next challenge, right?
And
But
the
often
labyrinth
what
could be,
happens,
like what Michelle was saying, it could be a hand thing. Like I know that I got a small copy, like about 8 by 8 inches, and I just kind of do it with my finger, which is really kind of relaxing and fun too.
A labyrinth with your finger. Yeah.
and draw or color, like I don't know how many therapy sessions I've done while a student colored a picture.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and brain doing a
Because
double doodle also.
doodling is great for, well, Natascha, what about all the things you create when we're doing meetings, right? Are you doing one right now, Natascha?
Just realized is that I actually tend to do something with colors when I'm stressed, or I cuddle with my cats. That's the two things that I do. But realizing also that in the time when I was still employed, the way to work and the way home from work was always to look for something small that made me happy. I wasn't happy at work, but it was just the red of the dogwood or of the roses, that little bit of splash of color in winter, like because they're so red in the white and gray, and the eagle flying, or if when we were lucky seeing the whale jumping or the dolphins jumping when we went to over the causeway. That's the advantage of living at the ocean. But just tiny things like that made me happy and made basically the day go better. So while you were talking about walking in and coming in from nature, even just if you manage to create the habit of find something that makes you happy on the way, that's already a balance in itself.
Or even, you know, in the classrooms at school, they'll have the plants in the classroom, and to be able to connect with the plant just by knowing it's there and just saying, you know, like you said, Tanya, just saying hello to your plants and just paying honor to them, and yours started to bloom. So you can imagine that if you're sitting in the classroom all day and you can, you know, if you need to have a conversation with someone but you can't go anywhere, to be able to turn to the plant, and it might be across the room, but at least you can have a conversation and say, hey, I see you. Thank you for being here. And just pulling in some of the energy of that green that can come to it.
And paying attention to the stories we tell ourselves, right? Because we tell ourselves stories like, I don't have time to trace my finger. I don't have time to breathe. I don't have time to get up and go to the bathroom. And I had a story that I kill basil. And then this year I was determined to do something about that story. So I went and bought all these basil plants, and I talked to them every day and I nurtured them. And I realized that as soon as I listened to them and invited their energy into my life, heart, body, whatever you want, they were fine. And they started to talk to me, take me to Michelle. So I took some to Michelle. And then 3 of them said, put me in a big pot. So I put them in a big pot. When I put them in a big pot, they got bigger and bigger, which just blew me away, right? But I think our stress is like that. Like our life is like that garden, right? And we can grow weeds or we can grow basil. And if we focus on the weeds will get bigger. And if we focus on the basil gets bigger, or whatever you want to focus on, right? And I think that that's the biggest message with September coming. We can focus on the news and the stress and all the things that are happening that are out of our control right now. And there are many. Or we can focus on what's in our control to build our strength up.
You know what comes to my mind when you say that? How many weeds are not really weeds, but actually plants that are beneficial for you, but they're considered weeds? So it really is a matter of your perspective, and to shift your sight, to shift your perspective on things, and to see how does it serve me and how does it not serve me, right? How can we shift that, the emotion of fear into something, yes, here's something that's challenging, but the challenge can be something good. It can be something joyful because you can grow with it and you can overcome it, and you become so much more by doing that. But if I consider it a problem or stress factor or whatever, it will be one.
If you look at the challenge of the mask, So as a little person described to me today, her fear of going back to school is that she's going to have to wear this mask. And as soon as she puts it on, she can't breathe. So the first reaction is this tension. But then if you can realize you're not breathing. So it's not that the mask made you not breathe, you actually aren't breathing. And to be able to go back and do that nice deep breath and bring in that awareness and the perspective of, this is teaching me how to breathe. I didn't realize that when I'm stressed, I stop breathing. But the mask is showing me that I am making that reaction, but I can change my reaction. So it's another way of thinking about that mask. And for some of us, putting a mask on means we're hidden and we don't want to be hidden. But the other side is we can express ourselves with our mask because we can put the different kinds of fabrics on, we can have messages on our mask, we can do all kinds of things with a mask, like the hockey players did in the goalies being able to set up their persona with their mask. How we can express ourselves with our mask is something we haven't even dove into before. So then you have, how could I be expressive with my mask? Now I know how to breathe better. I can relax while I put it on. And now this can help express who I am in a way I never had before. So it might be another way to look.
The other thing I noticed,
Go ahead, Tanya.
I was just going to say, I noticed by wearing my mask often is that whatever essential oil I've sprayed in the morning, like roses, has started to go into the mask. And so now when I put it on, it's like, because I can smell the roses in it. And so, like, I think we need to give ourselves permission too, like if we want to put a drop of rose or a drop of tea tree oil or like something in the mask that would comfort us, or even a little bit of, you know, something, you know, spray something and then put it on. And like, I think there's ways to make it our own, I guess.
But that's
That's
exactly
kind of what you're saying, right?
that's exactly what I meant. Like overcoming from the perspective, this is suffocating me, this is hindering me, to the point I can overcome, I can be successful, I can be the victor here, and not the victim.
And not victim. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think part of that too is, you know, each one of us showed different tools that we use, and everyone is going to have their own. And I think part of what we can demonstrate is that all 5 of us all have different tools that we use differently, and that people have their own tools. They just don't even realize they do. And that's where the empowerment comes from victim to taking charge again. That, you know, everybody has some way that makes them feel calm and good. Let them discover what that is and reinforce that.
Mm-hmm.
Paula, do you have anything to add?
In terms of tools, well, one thing I wanted to say about the mask, one thing has been a big challenge for me is not seeing someone smile. And so I've been really paying attention that I have a twinkle in my eyes so that they know that I'm smiling. So I'm connecting a lot more and noticing eyes a lot more. So I always used to look for the smile. Now I'm looking for that little sparkle in their eyes. So I think that's a good thing. I'm making more eye connection. I've always looked, you know, I look at the smile and then I look at the eyes and it's like, nope, I'm just looking straight at the eyes. And I think that's a great thing.
I noticed the last video that I did, I think it was a Facebook Live, but my eyebrows had gone up and down, up and down, up and down. And I'm just noticing as you're saying that, and you were expressing with your eyes, it's the same thing. Yeah, and it's like, I think we even forgot that we had this section because so much is geared around what is our face doing and what is that expression that's coming out of our smile or not coming out of our smile. Mm-hmm.
I think too, just going back to talking about some tools, what I have found is that so often I focus on the stress part, the awareness that I'm under stress. And I think that's really important that I'm aware. And for me, I always feel it in my gut. That's an indicator it's tight, and it's usually because I'm holding my breath. So I'm really trying to pay attention when I'm not feeling good. When I'm just noticing it's either in my mind I'm not feeling good, I'm having a negative thought, or if I'm feeling it in my body, that I'm feeling really tight and restricted and constricted. And that's usually a sign for me that I'm holding my breath. and that I need to access one of my tools. And the other thing I'm really trying to pay attention to is when I feel good. How does that feel in my body? So I know what not feeling good feels like in my body. So it's like, okay, I need to do something. I need to go for a walk, access one of my tools. I also want to pay attention to when I'm actually feeling good and how does that feel in my body? And I just noticed there's more expansiveness. There's more openness in my body. You know, when I stretch, that makes such a difference. I notice if I wake up feeling a little bit anxious, the best thing for me is to go out for a walk and then do a little bit of a stretch. The stretching really opens it up. So that's what I'm really trying to pay attention to, is not only the stress in my body, but the feeling good in my body as well. And to see if I can continue to access that.
But basically, again, that's shifting the attention from what is making me fear something, what does it do to me, the body awareness. Okay, where is it showing up, and how can I change that, right? And the same with me with the mask. I know that this is my reaction, and that's a panic attack, basically. I still haven't found out where it comes from, but I have had that as a child already. And just being able to know you can breathe, and then just to do the deep breathing instead of the I can't breathe, right? Start deep breathing and it will be okay. Yes, you have to adjust the mask. It doesn't help. It's just a reflex. But to see you can overcome that. But actually, honestly, I don't like to go shopping anymore.
One thing too is I found is that for me it's really important for that awareness piece is that something exciting here.
Yeah, the power came back on. Sorry.
Yay!
Wow.
Well, one thing I've noticed for me is in that awareness piece, it is just having that awareness and to be able to sit with that stress for a little bit and just to acknowledge it and name it. And as I investigate that in my body, then that enables me to move through it. Rather than going, okay, I just got to get out of this right away. It's just taking a few moments to breathe into it, to allow it and acknowledge it, and just to investigate a little bit, and then to access one of my tools. A friend of ours, she was mentioning how that, you know, August is often a month where normally kids going back to school or teenagers going back to school or, you know, 20-somethings going back to school. It's often a stressful month. It's a stressful month for educators as well. There's that anxiety of starting over. And I think this year in Ontario, we've been off since March. So I think there's a bigger stress in terms of going back. There's so many unknowns, and it's just making August a little bit more stressful than normal. And for those that have had this really great opportunity to have family at home and working at home and being together, it's that separation. It's that little, they've had that connection, and now there's that concern that you're not going to get much family time. Especially as, you know, people say, oh, we've missed a lot of schooling, we've missed a lot of, you know, academics. And there's that pressure of, you know, am I still going to have that time with my family? So I think that that's an anxiety that's coming up for some people. And, you know, for, again, it's having that connection, and how can you continue to have that connection with family? So there'd be lots of different tools that I'd use if I was feeling a bit stressed. So I'm going to share one of my favorite stress tools. I've got, there's many, but this is one that I often do in the morning. If I wake up, then I check in with my breath. And if I notice that I'm breathing in my chest rather than in my belly, then I know I'm feeling a little bit stressed. If I'm breathing quickly, then I know I'm feeling a little bit stressed. So that's my first thing I usually do, is just check in with my breath when I wake up and just notice. And if I'm breathing quickly or breathing from my chest, then I know I need to take a few moments to get into abdominal breathing. So that's one of the strategies. So just focusing on the breath and allowing your abdomen to expand as you inhale. And then very slowly allowing it to release on the exhale. And breathing in through our nose and out through our nose. And that really helps with the oxygen and carbon dioxide exchange. And then I add my favorite tool, one of my favorite tools. And that's doing where you put a few fingers here just between your eyebrows. So placing 3 or 4 fingers down, and you're just doing a very gentle pull up on the skin. And it's fairly light. And then you're taking your other hand and you're pulling up on your navel with your fingers. And again, it's fairly gentle, but we're just doing a tug on the skin, and you're inhaling, allowing your abdomen to expand. And a very slow exhale, allowing your abdomen to release. And just continuing to do that for 2 or 3 breaths. If you can do that for about 30 seconds, that is a very calming movement. And I've been hit a few times in the head with a basketball or a soccer ball. And what I did right away when that happened was I did this, it's another type of hookup. And you're working on central and governing meridians. And it's a really great way of just calming the system whenever you've had a little bit of stress or a little, as I said, I've been hit a few times in the head with a ball. So that would be the first thing that I would do. Focusing on the breath, focusing on the movement, and the intention just being to calm our body.
I do something a little bit different than what you do, but also for that same calming and breathing. And that's the cook's hookups before getting out of bed. So I'll cross my right foot over my left, cross my right hand over my left. I might link my fingers. I might just cross them because it depends how comfortable I am, where I am. And then just breathing and thinking about my day. How do I want my day to go? What are the goals that I might have? So I might want to easily and joyfully put the mask on, get on the school bus and go to school and rejoice in seeing my friends, something like that. And I just picture myself, how happy I am doing what I need to do to get to school and then what's going to happen at school, but rejoicing in the parts that are going to fulfill me and bring me happiness. And then I'll change my fingers to this position, put it in front of my belly button and put my feet together. And this, what I'll do is walk myself through each piece that I need to do to get to going out the door. Because that always for me was a stressor, my lunch, my breakfast. So then I could just go, okay, for breakfast, I'm gonna have cereal and orange juice and I'm gonna grab my favorite apple or peach or whatever. And my lunch, I'm gonna have this if I have to prepare it myself, or if my parent is gonna have it ready for me, just being able to put it in my backpack. And when I zip up my backpack, I know I'm ready for the day. And I just sit there and breathe and think about letting that run through my mind, the scenario. And as soon as I put my feet on the floor, I've already know what I'm doing for the day and I just carry on and do it. So that one I've used a lot, probably the last decade, for a lot of different things that I've done. And it always makes everything run really smooth. So.
I think setting that intention is a really important part. And I find that really helpful to be able to set an intention for what you'd like your day to be like, or even what you'd like your interactions to be like within the day. So that's really helpful, Michelle.
Tanya, what kind of thoughts do you kind of prep your day with?
Usually that everything I need will be provided and that all will flow with grace and ease.
Nice. And grace and beautiful words.
Yes. Grace and ease is usually what I go for, and flow.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's a very fluid thing working in education and the helping profession. You can have a crisis, you can have things that need to be done by a certain time, you can have your day planned and 5 things be added to it. You can, so you just want everything to flow and be easy.
One thing we were chatting about here with some of the things going on in our lives, in our family right now, is just keeping our eye on the focus of the goal. Because we do have all of these things we have no control over navigating around us and through us and in us. But when you, at the end of the day, especially if you're going to school or work, then you're thinking about what it is you want by the end of the day. So, and if it is, you're just so happy to be able to go back to school and see your friends, then to know that you set up all those relationships that you were missing, or the chance to just be in the room together for an extended period of time instead of that play date that you got this week or maybe next week, but you actually get to see each other every day and be closer to each other. And then to just bring that in as your vision, and then all the angst of all the other stuff that's floating in and out isn't really important. You're just there because you get to be together. Lisa, is there anything that you're thinking about through that piece?
Well, it's a lot of what we've already been saying. Like what you basically just said was kind of what Tanya was saying about the story that we tell ourselves. And it's a little bit also what Paula was saying, and you were both saying, I think even Natascha was saying, it, where we put our focus, that's what's going to grow. So I think we're kind of all coming around to that same thing. My morning routine is very similar to yours, Michelle, but I don't just do the hookups, I do the entire pace sequence. So there's a reason why there's a sequence, that there's 3 movements before we get into hookups, and we could talk about that at some point. But setting an intention of how you want the day to be and kind of rehearsing it in your mind, I think is super important, especially when you're young and there's so many unknowns. At least the part that you can control, and that gives you some mastery and some empowerment over what's going on around you. And the other one is to distinguish between, we have all these little tornadoes that Tanya just described that we're stuck in the midst of, but if we just let ourselves be sucked into all those tornadoes, we're of no use to anyone, least of all to ourselves. So it's the ability to really be very centered and stable and focused on what we need to do. That doesn't mean we don't care about what other people are going through, but we can be caring and supportive without embarking and jumping into the tornado with them. So that's, I think, something that we as adults are in constant learning, but children have very few tools. They're never really taught how to do anything like that.
I have 2 things based on what you just said, and one is that the Cook's hookups, I've had one of my students who used that to go to sleep. So she did the same thing and set herself up, I'm going to easily and joyfully go to sleep and have a good night's rest, whatever. And when I wake up in the morning, I'm going to be refreshed. So something like that is how to navigate herself. And that was the charm for her right from the moment she started using that tool.
Yeah, it is a great tool, and the hookup position is a very appeasing position to the physiologically to the body. It's kind of the antithesis to, when you go into startle and fight or flight. So when we go into the hookup, we kind of trigger the parasympathetic nervous system, and the kidneys open, and all the hormones that need to be released to counteract survival mode physiologically begin the process of being released. It's a wonderful, wonderful position to take. It's just not always accessible or possible when we're extremely stressed. Somebody's way out there and flying off the walls, to ask them to do this is not always evident. So through his research and through the work that Paul Dennison was doing, he kind of developed a routine to get us into the hookup position, but there's a very precise sequence to get us there. And that's what we call pace and brain jumps. So it's always kind of what we start with, and the end of pace is definitely the hookup. But there's a way to get to it so that physiologically the body's ready to take that on.
And you did the full pace protocol when we did our webinar last week. So that's
right. But I mean, of course, we couldn't get into the explanation of everything. But yes, because when somebody gives me 5 minutes to talk about Brain Gym, as best as possible, I'll try to get paste in there somehow.
Right. But you did share that in the workshop, right? So you have access to find that. So as we're talking about it, it is there for them already.
Absolutely.
The webinar of stress release for families that's posted on CanBeWell's YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Oh, don't I feel great when I stretch? You know, it's as the adults, it's modeling that and then taking the time to slow down, take that intentional pause and see if we can invite our kids in and offer that to them as a way of feeling good. I think a really key piece for me as an adult though is to model it, to model that sometimes I am feeling a little bit stressed and that this is what I can do to bring my body back to calm. And movement is key for me because in many, many meetings, that's exactly what I was doing. Under the table, I would be rubbing my hands, rubbing my feet, doing the cook posture, you know, doing lots of things. And that's how I managed to get through a lot of meetings and feel calm and able to participate in the conversations, is that I was keeping my body calm and breathing and trying to counteract the stress I was feeling in a challenging situation.
The advantage of Zoom is that you only see, you know, the bottom can be fidgeting and nobody would know.
Yeah. I was thinking, Paula, about what you said with families and, you know, to think about the opportunity that people have had by being together and they haven't been wrapped up in that schedule of racing the children off to all their different activities and the obligations. We've been home. And to think about what have been the key pieces about being together as a family that they've enjoyed the most. And then to be able to say, you know, if we enjoy having supper together at 5. So then if you go, okay, that seemed to be the key piece for our family, that's the piece we're going to hold on to as we go into this fall schedule. Or maybe it's twice a week we were involved in an activity of playing games or going for a walk together. And then saying, those are the 2 things we're going to hold on to, and they get scheduled right onto the calendar. They're the most important thing. Everything else will have to work around it. And I think that's something that got lost with us being scheduled by everybody else, is it was, we don't have time for that anymore, or we only have time for it in these certain little intervals. But if we make that our priority and bring it back around to go, we're first as a family, because this time is precious as a family. It disappears so quickly. Once they're grown and gone, that's it. And so to be able to say, you know what, I had this family to be a priority, so let's put it first and everything else can work around it.
And what is that? It's nothing else but a shift of perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Where the emphasis is, what's important.
Yeah.
And I think we just spent many, many months not allowing ourselves to plan. I mean, not really technically being able to plan. And there's a big part of our brain that loves to plan. And, you know, we get agendas, so we can plan out our years and our months and our weeks. And we just spent from March till now kind of on a holding pattern. So this notion of planning again is almost kind of tentative. Do we really dare? Like how far ahead is it okay to plan without it all being dashed to smithereens again, kind of thing. So even the notion of planning, I think, right now has a certain amount of uncertainty and stress attached to it. But I love the idea of taking the rituals that were meaningful during this time and making sure that those do continue.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.